This week's episode of Parasyte the Maxim was an anime bloodbath. Gunshots, limb chopping, decapitation. This episode's pretty disturbing. And to top it all off, the episode ends with a tasteful and surprisingly heartwarming love scene. So let's talk about some of the highlights from this week's episode. We immediately pick up from last week, where the Parasyte Extermination Squad is going around Resident Evil style and blasting all the parasites. And we pick up from the last episode where we see the character of Hirakawa, who is basically trying to plead the case for the parasites. And I only say he's trying to plead the case for them because it's actually revealed in this week's episode that he is actually a human working with them, which is really strange because he's all about self-preservation on a massive scale. He says that basically humans are the parasitic vermin which are covering the earth and killing all the animals, and that really everybody should be sticking together and basically looking out for all forms of life. All forms and organisms, and basically they just unload on him and kill him, and that's when they realize he's a human. Then suddenly out of nowhere, Goto shows up and starts filleting everybody left and right. I especially love that one scene when they were stuck in the hallway and he was surrounded, and he just destroyed all of these guys around him and sent blood spraying all over the walls. It kind of reminded me of that one scene from Akira, where the similar thing happened in the hallway. It was just blah all over the place. It was really nasty. It's at this point that the Extermination Squad realizes that they're basically caught in the spider's web, and they decide they're going to have to go to the top of the roof to finish him off, and that's when Yamagishi finally has his big confrontation with Goto, which is awesome. We get to see more of Goto's abilities. He actually creates this big metallic shield out of his arm. He's jumping all over the place, and he basically just wails all over Yamagishi. I mean, he defeats him Dragon Ball Z style, and then decapitates him and throws his head off the roof, which everybody else ends up seeing and freaking out as they should, and then he suddenly jumps down and gets ready to fight Shinichi, but then he decides to run away and decides they're going to fight another day. Definitely building up probably the big finale of this series. Another thing that is interesting is it looks like Origami is going to escape, because there's a scene in the episode where the guy who is guarding him freaks out when he sees all the dead bodies, and Origami picks up a gun and kills him frickin' RoboCop 2 style. He blasts him at point blank range and even shoots his hand off. Safe to say, the first half of the episode is just downright disturbing and action-packed. The second half of the episode is a different beast altogether. It's basically Shinichi going through the paranoia of wondering when Goto is going to find him and kill him. He even imagines Goto's face on random people all over the city. And then it gets kind of awkward for a second when he runs into Satomi Murano. And every single time this has happened in the series, it never really goes anywhere. And he tries to hug her, and he starts hugging her too hard and hurting her, and he freaks out and just starts to run away. Shinichi takes refuge at this park at night because that's just what you do in Parasyte the Maxim. And Satomi finds him because she honestly knows him so well. And this eventually leads to them going back to her house and having a surprisingly tasteful sex scene. It was really well done. They didn't really show anything, and you can actually see a real strong connection and, love between these two characters. What I also really love about this scene is how Satomi is the one who's sort of drawing Shinichi out of the darkness and bringing him back to the light, so to speak. And now he's all pumped up and ready for the finale. He wants to live now. Before, he was ready to just be killed at any moment. It actually took Satomi's love to actually bring him back to life, and I thought that was handled really well. So what's the rundown on this week's episode of Parasyte the Maxim? Blood, guts, and sex. This week's episode was pretty damned intense altogether, and it's doing a really good job of building up the finale of Parasyte the Maxim, which has a couple of wild cards in it thanks to what happened in this week's episode. We technically have two final villains going for us now, because we got Goto, the parasite, who's freaking crazy and has a lot of crazy abilities, and then we have Origami, who just escaped out of nowhere, and they're definitely going to have to follow up on that character. There's no way they're just going to be able to leave that hanging, but this episode was just really a yin-yang type of episode, how it felt. I mean, the first half of the episode was like horror, hallway shooter, action, ridiculous. It was nuts, especially that scene on the roof. It was really well animated, and definitely one of the better action scenes that I've seen from the series. And I already knew immediately, as soon as they panned down and they showed something falling, I knew that was going to be his head or something, and lo and behold it was, and it was really, really creepy. The second half of the episode, though, was really good, just mostly because of how tense things were, because Shinichi was basically feeling that it's over now, there's nothing he could do. I mean, he was just basically waiting to be killed, and I love how he was brought out of his funk by getting with Satomi. I thought that was handled really well, and it was all done, and it was very emotional. And it was great because now hopefully the relationship has finally been completely patched up at this point. I mean, I don't know how much further they're going to go with that in this series, but I mean, this is definitely like the biggest moment for their relationship. But otherwise, this was just an action-packed, well-done episode of the series, and I just cannot wait for the finale. I'm so pumped up for it, because anything could happen at this point with Goto and Origami, and I'm really excited for that. And I can't wait to see if Satomi's going to find out about Migi. That's been one of the things I've been interested about since the very beginning of the series, but now that they're effectively in a relationship, and it's like for real this time, she's probably going to figure out eventually. I mean, how can you not notice that? So, there it is. Fantastic episode, really well done, getting us pumped up for the finale of Parasyte the Maxim. I loved this episode. It was really well animated. It was incredibly tense. The action scenes were great. The final bit was great. Everything was good. So I'm going to give this week's episode a 5 out of 5. Check it out, guys. Amazing episode. Thank you guys for watching my review. If you liked this video, please give it a thumbs up. And before you guys leave, please tell me what you thought about this week's episode of Parasyte the Maxim. And what do you want to see from the finale of the series? Make sure to subscribe to our channel if you haven't already. And you can also check us out on Facebook and on Twitter. And you should also check out our brand new video podcast series, The Powerful Nerdcast. I'll put a link for that in the description box below.